between 1941 and 1945, as the Soviet Union fought against Hitler's Nazis during World War II. Among the most valuable members of the Red Army's ranks were their snipers. Capable of concealing themselves from the enemy, and of striking down a target with extreme force from a considerable distance, many German soldiers would meet their end by these highly skilled sharpshooters. Perhaps surprisingly though, over 2,000 of the USSR's snipers during the Second World War were female. Combined, these women achieved over 11,000 kills, and have gone down in history as some of the most efficient fighters of the war. Some of these women, however, stand out in particular for their prowess with a rifle. Ludmila Pavlichenko and Rosa Shanina, to be precise, were the most accomplished in their field, and they earned a fearsome reputation as a result. Today, we will be exploring the lives and achievements of these deadly female snipers, sharing the stories of their bloody conflicts during World War II. Welcome to Wars of the World. So why did the Soviets in particular choose to fill their ranks with female snipers, given the fact that many armies of the time were composed almost entirely of men? Well, much of the answer comes from a series of beliefs held by the Soviets during the time of the war. It was thought that the role of sniper in the military would fit a woman well, as a sharpshooter would need to exhibit a great deal of patience, deliberation, and accuracy in their duties. All of these characteristics were synonymous with femininity during Soviet Russia, and as such, the Red Army employed a total of 2,484 female snipers. Tragically, however, only 500 of them would survive the conflict. Soviet propaganda of the time also promoted equality of both sexes, and while in many parts of society that equality was sadly not realized, the military did take on a large number of women, providing them with a range of opportunities. Unfortunately, these opportunities were often hard to come by, and were mainly voluntary, even with the Russian military striving for equality. Many women who had applied to fight in the war had their applications blocked before they could even be considered, or they would run into convenient red tape which stalled their admission into the military. It was hard for Soviet women to fight for their country, despite the fact that at the start of the Second World War, the Soviet military had sustained heavy losses. Across the board, manpower had been reduced as a result of the intense fighting, and the Russians were experiencing a shortage of soldiers. While this led to many young women developing a burning passion to fight the Nazis, they were a mere drop in the ocean when it came to the vast numbers of male soldiers ready to fight for the Red Army. The Soviet military actually employed over 800,000 women over the course of the Second World War, many of whom found their calling in non-combat roles, such as those of medics and signallers. Thousands still, however, did take on roles in the front lines, and amongst those fighting the Germans were female Soviet machine gunners, tank crews, and combat pilots. Today, the image of the Soviet female sniper has been popularized in films, books, and even video games. And in particular, there's a select few women to thank who are well and truly at the top of their game. Alia Muldagalova, who was born in 1925 in what is today Kazakhstan, will be just one of the female snipers who would go down in history for her achievements. Raised amid the Soviet famine of the 1930s, and coming from a poor family who had to scrape out a living in the countryside, her short life was marked by violence. Muldagalova's mother was killed by a watchman for stealing potatoes in 1933, and her father would be persecuted by the government for being a descendant of a nobleman from the pre-Soviet era. For over a year, she would wander the streets of her village without a home, until finding help from her uncle, moving in with relatives in the city of Almaty. During her time in Almaty, Muldagalova managed to piece together scraps of an education, but was always described as a very firm individual. She moved to Moscow in 1935, and then to Leningrad, when her uncle joined the Military Transport Academy, where she was able to continue her education for a short while. Then, with the outbreak of World War II in 1941, Muldagalova would be the only member of her family to remain in Leningrad. She applied to join the military in 1942 and swore to defend the motherland to the end. Muldagalova would train to become a sniper at the young age of 17 at the Central Women's Sniper Training School near Moscow. Reportedly, she had a strong desire to head to the front lines, and she steadily honed her sharpshooting skills over time. In July of 1943, she was assigned to the 15th Rifle Brigade of the 22nd Army, and by October she had put down 32 Nazis as they attempted to invade the USSR. In a memoir written by one of her fellow snipers, she was described as having shown, quote, exceptional fearlessness when she not only beat the fascists, but also carried wounded comrades from the battlefield and performed them first aid. Tragically, at the age of just 18, Muldagalova was killed in action, after racking up a total of 91 confirmed kills as a sniper, as she attempted to repel a German counterattack near the village of Kazachika. She was wounded in the arm by a fragment from a mine. The attack would force her into close quarters combat, and although she managed to kill an oncoming German officer, she would ultimately lose her life from the injuries sustained by the mine. In June of 1944, Muldagalova would be posthumously awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, and was decorated with the Order of Lenin. Rosa Shanina, one of the most famous female Soviet snipers of the war, was born in the Russian village of Edma in 1924. Shanina was one of 7 children and 3 adopted orphans, and she began her education in the town of Bereznik. Against her parents' wishes, she attempted to pursue a secondary education, leaving home at 14 to attempt to study at the Archangelsk College. Taking a job at a kindergarten in order to finance her studies, she would graduate in 1942, when the USSR was already in the throes of war. Shanina's brother, Mikhail, had passed away in 1941 during the infamous siege of Leningrad. Heartbroken by this loss, Shanina opted to join the military herself, and was eventually admitted into the Sovobuch program for military training in June of 1942. She would attend a local shooting range to hone her skills before undertaking advanced training, and soon she would find herself at the Central Women's Sniper Training School in Moscow. Shanina did well in her training and graduated with honours. She would then find herself amongst the ranks of the 184th Rifle Division, amongst a platoon of fellow female snipers. Shanina immediately proved her skill, but after killing her first German soldier, she recoiled in horror at the idea of taking a man's life. her comrades reminded her of the reasons for waging war against these fascist invaders, and she soon wrote that she was killing the enemy in cold blood and saw the meaning of life in her actions. Shanina soon became the commander of her platoon and received the Order of Glory 3rd Class for her efforts in April of 1944. Shanina's skills would strengthen as the war progressed. Across her career, she was known to have made over 50 confirmed kills, using counter-sniper tactics to bring down enemy sharpshooters, and even outwitted German soldiers by entering their territory stealthily, picking them off one by one. She remained determined to provide as much fire as she could to the front line, but was eventually overwhelmed by the Germans' attempts to strengthen their advance during the East Prussian offensive of early 1945. Her final diary reports acknowledged that she was drawing closer and closer to a terrible death as German fire intensified, and she would ultimately lose her life on the 27th of January. A shell had exploded nearby, tearing open her chest, and despite attempts to save her, she would die from her injuries. Shanina was honoured posthumously in the Soviet press throughout the 1960s. Streets across Arkhangelsk Oblast were named after her, and sporting organisations from the area hold ski races to compete for the Rosa Shanina Prize. By far the most famous and accomplished female Soviet sniper was none other than Ludmila Pavlichenko. Pavlichenko was born in 1916 in what is now Kiev Oblast, Ukraine. Having moved to the city of Kiev aged 14, she joined a shooting club and soon trained as an amateur sharpshooter. She studied history at Kiev University starting in 1937 and initially intended to become a schoolteacher upon graduation. While completing her studies, however, she enrolled in a sniping school hosted by the Red Army, and she developed an interest in pursuing a career in the military. Pavlichenko requested to join the military in 1941 when Germany invaded the Soviet Union. At the age of 25, she had a strong desire to join the infantry, but the registrar had pushed her to become a nurse. Pavlichenko refused, and was eventually accepted as a sniper, given her extensive training. She joined the 25th Rifle Division and was initially assigned to simply digging out trenches and routes for communication, armed only with a single grenade due to shortages in weapons. In August of 1941, Pavlichenko would make her first kills with a sniper rifle. 2 German officers who were brought down by her fire in Belyaevka. During the siege of Odessa, Pavlichenko spent around 2.5 months furiously raining down sniper fire on the German invaders, and she made 187 confirmed kills. There would be 100 additional Nazis to die by her hand over the subsequent months, which would see her promoted to senior sergeant. When the Nazis overran Odessa in October of 1941, Pavlichenko withdrew to Sevastopol and began training fresh snipers for the Red Army. While defending the city during the siege of Sevastopol, Pavlichenko would kill over 100 more German soldiers, and by the end of the war, is believed to have claimed the lives of 309 Nazi invaders, and 36 of her targets were enemy marksmen. Such was the skill of Pavlichenko that she would even depart on a publicity tour, visiting the United States and Canada, and was the first Soviet citizen to be received by an American president. She met with Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1942. Despite sustaining wounds from mortar fire, she survived the war, and became a propagandist for the Red Army. She was given the nickname Lady Death, on account of her sniping prowess, and continued to train new recruits until the end of the war. When the war eventually came to a close, Pavlichenko would go on to finish her university education and would become a historian, researching Soviet military history. In 1974, at the age of 58, Ludmila Pavlichenko would pass away after suffering from a stroke. Among her many honors and awards are 2 Orders of Lenin, a Hero of the Soviet Union Commendation, and medals for the defense of Odessa and Sevastopol. In the modern age, Pavlichenko has been immortalized on the big screen during 2015's Battle for Sevastopol, and her memoir Lady Death was made available in the West in 2018. While the female snipers of the Soviet Union killed thousands of German troops during the invasion of the USSR, only a small fraction of them were able to survive the conflict as a whole. Many of them were young women with their whole lives ahead of them who were brutally killed before their time. Their efforts in assisting the Allies to win the Second World War have gone down in international history. But the 3 women we have met today were far from alone. There are thousands of stories, now tragically lost to the archives, that played out alongside those of Pavlichenko, Shanina, and Maldogolova. What we do know, however, about those who fought, died, and survived the war is nothing short of fascinating and full of admiration. Thank you for watching today's video. If you found it informative, please leave a like or a comment down below. All of our content, from the research and scriptwriting to the editing and narration, is completely human-driven, without the use of AI. So if you want to support our channel, consider subscribing and use the bell icon to get notifications on when the next Wars of the World video is released. Thank you for watching.